Broken by perfection. How Yu Menglong's search for flawlessness destroyed his heart. He wanted everything to be perfect, his art, his image, his life. But in the end, it was that same perfection that broke him from the inside. Yu Menglong, a man whose smile once warmed millions, was slowly shattered by the standards he built for himself and the ones the world never stopped demanding. Behind the flawless photographs, the flawless performances, the flawless life, there lived a man who was terrified of being anything less. Every move, every scene, every song had to reflect perfection. To the public, Yu Menglong was an icon of grace and discipline, the face of elegance and control. But what no one saw was how much it cost him to stay that way, how much of himself he had to bury beneath the glittering surface to meet expectations that were never meant to be human. He didn't want to disappoint. That was always his fear. The quiet, soft-spoken boy who rose from humble beginnings in China to international stardom never forgot how it felt to be overlooked. And once the spotlight found him, he swore he'd never lose it again. Every sleepless night, every self-doubt, every harsh word from directors or fans, he took it all in silence. "I can do better," he would say, even when he was already breaking. His closest friends would later recall how he'd disappear for days after a performance that didn't meet his expectations. Not because others criticized him, but because he did. No matter how much praise he received, you always found flaws that no one else saw. "Perfection isn't a goal," he once said in an interview. "It's a responsibility." Those words sounded admirable then. Today, they echo like a warning. The entertainment world worships perfection. Flawless faces, perfect timing, no mistakes, no weakness. But for Yu Menglong, it became a silent prison. Every photo had to be retaken until his smile looked effortless. Every scene had to be reshot until emotion felt just right. Every song had to be sung again until it broke his voice. His pursuit of flawlessness wasn't driven by vanity, but by fear. Fear of being ordinary, fear of being forgotten, fear of failing the people who believed in him. He lived under constant pressure from fans, from directors, from himself. To everyone else, he was the standard of excellence. To himself, he was never enough. When he won awards, he smiled politely. When he received compliments, he nodded humbly. But inside, he was already calculating what he could have done better. He didn't celebrate success, he analyzed it. Friends said his apartment was always spotless, his scripts meticulously marked, his wardrobe arranged by color and tone. But they also said something else. There was no warmth there, no clutter, no sign of rest, only order, only control. It was as if he was trying to fix the chaos in his heart by organizing everything around him. There were times he would talk about taking a break, disappearing somewhere quiet, maybe writing, maybe just breathing. But then the fear would return. If I stop, will they forget me? And so he kept going, working, smiling, pushing. The cracks began to show, but the cameras never stopped rolling. His social media posts grew less frequent, his captions shorter, smiles more practiced. He started wearing oversized clothes, hiding the weight he was losing. Some fans noticed, but most thought it was just a new aesthetic. In truth, he was fading, piece by piece, behind the illusion of perfection. The last few months of his life were filled with silent exhaustion. He was shooting multiple projects, attending events, doing interviews, all while trying to hold himself together. His messages to friends became slower, replies more delayed. When they asked if he was okay, he would laugh lightly, say he was just tired. He always said he was tired. He once wrote in his private notes, later found after his passing, "It's not that I don't want to live. I just don't know how to live without pretending to be perfect." That line alone revealed everything the world had missed. The applause that was supposed to lift him up had become chains around his soul. Every cheer reminded him that he couldn't fail. Every expectation reminded him that being human was not allowed. Perfectionism can be beautiful. It creates art, inspires growth, drives ambition. But it can also destroy. It whispers that you're never enough, even when you've given everything. It convinces you that rest is laziness, that emotion is weakness, that love must be earned through performance. Yu Menglong believed he was chasing excellence, but in reality he was running from imperfection, from the softness and flaws that made him human. Those who loved him tried to reach him. One of his colleagues recalled calling him one night after noticing he looked withdrawn on set. He said he just needed to finish one more scene, she said, and then he'd rest. But that rest never came. That was the night he reportedly collapsed alone in his apartment, surrounded by unfinished scripts and unread messages. When the news broke, the world was stunned. Tributes flooded the internet, fans sharing clips of his laughter, photos of his brightest moments, words like perfect, flawless, unforgettable. But maybe those very words were the ones that broke him, because perfection was what everyone loved about him, and what he could never live up to forever. His final days revealed how deeply the industry's demands can erode a soul. Every show, every brand, every campaign wanted the perfect Yu Menglong. No one asked if he was okay. No one asked if he was tired. Because the world doesn't pause for pain, not in fame, not in perfection. Those close to him said he rarely complained. Even when he was hurting, he'd smile and say, "I'm fine." That phrase, simple, ordinary, became his armor. And like all armor, it grew heavy. It suffocated him slowly, until there was no space left to breathe. What haunted everyone most after his passing wasn't just the loss. It was the realization that he had been crying out silently for years. His perfection wasn't pride. It was a cry for control, for safety, for worth. He didn't want to. The silence after his death was deafening. For the first time, the world that once cheered Yu Menglong's every step had no words. The cameras stopped flashing, the stages dimmed, and the fans who once called him perfect were left asking the same haunting question. Why? But the answer was already written in the quiet spaces of his life, the moments between the applause, when the lights went out and the man behind the perfection was left alone with his reflection. He had built a world that adored him, yet he couldn't find a place inside it where he could simply be. Perfection was his blessing, but also his curse. From his earliest roles, he showed a dedication that stunned his directors. He would rehearse lines long after everyone else went home, refusing to sleep until every gesture felt natural. Every emotion looked real. He didn't act, one co-star said. He became the role. But sometimes, I think he forgot to become himself again when the scene was over. That became his pattern, to vanish into the characters he played, chasing a sense of identity he couldn't find in his own skin. On set, he was alive. Off set, he was quiet. His colleagues often found him sitting in corners during breaks, headphones on, eyes lost in thought. "I just need to feel the scene again," he would say. But what he really needed was to feel something real, something unfiltered, something human. In private, Yu Menglong was fragile in ways few ever saw. His notebooks, later recovered from his apartment, were filled with sketches, lyrics, and scattered words that revealed a restless heart. "If I stop, I'll disappear," one page read. "If I rest, the world will move on without me." Another note, written in uneven strokes, simply said, "I wish I could be enough, just once." He was chasing a ghost, the version of himself that the world adored but he could never fully become. And with every achievement, that ghost moved further away. The more perfect he became, the lonelier he felt. Perfection isolated him, building invisible walls between himself and everyone who cared about him. There were nights when his friends tried to reach out. One recalled visiting him after a grueling shoot and finding him sitting on the floor, lights off, a glass of untouched water beside him. "He looked exhausted," she said. "I told him he needed a break. He smiled and said, 'Breaks are for people who've done enough.'" That sentence broke her, because how could someone who had given so much still feel like he hadn't done enough? His managers noticed it too. The way he'd overprepare for interviews, the way he'd apologize for mistakes no one noticed. Every time he tripped over a word, his expression would darken. Every time a fan comment mentioned he looked different or tired, he'd go silent for hours. The internet's casual cruelty, something stars are told to ignore, became daggers to someone who already believed he wasn't perfect enough. In the entertainment world, image is survival. You knew that better than anyone. His face was his brand, calm, flawless, ageless. The moment he showed fatigue, people whispered. The moment he withdrew, rumors spread. So he smiled wider. He laughed louder. He made the world believe he was okay, even when his eyes told a different story. There was one moment, a live fan event, that still haunts those who were there. He stood on stage, answering questions with that familiar, gentle charm. But as he spoke, his voice cracked slightly, his hand trembled just a bit. When asked about his plans for rest, he laughed and said, "Maybe one day when I finally get it all right." The crowd cheered, but in that laughter was a trace of truth. He didn't believe that one day would ever come. Behind his performances, perfection had become a quiet obsession. He would reshoot the same scene 20 times, rewrite lyrics until dawn, spend hours studying facial expressions in the mirror. Every flaw, every imperfection became a wound he couldn't forgive himself for. It wasn't arrogance, it was fear. Fear of being seen as anything less than extraordinary. Fear of disappointing those who believed in him. Fear of losing the fragile approval that fame had wrapped around him like a crown made of glass. One night, shortly before his death, a sound engineer remembered hearing him muttering to himself during a late studio session. "Just one more take. This one has to be perfect." It was 3 a.m. He'd been recording for nearly 10 hours. His voice was hoarse, his hands shaking. But he didn't stop. Perfection had become both his comfort and his curse, the thing that gave him purpose and the thing that took his peace. After his passing, a haunting discovery was made, a small voice memo saved on his phone. His voice, faint and tired, said, "Perfection doesn't make me happy anymore. I just want to feel proud, not scared." It was as if he finally realized what had been breaking him all along, the endless chase for something that could never fill the emptiness inside. His story has since sparked painful conversations in the industry about how the pressure to appear flawless can crush even the strongest souls. Actors, singers, and fans alike have begun to see the truth behind the glamour. Because Menglong'S tragedy isn't just his alone. It's a mirror reflecting what countless artists live through in silence. They're expected to smile when they're hurting, to perform when they're broken, to be perfect when they're human. But the truth is, even stars bleed, only they're forced to do it off camera where no one can see. If there's one image that captures Yu's final months, it's the one his housekeeper described. A single light always left on in his studio, even when the rest of the apartment was dark. A symbol of a man who never stopped working, never stopped trying. The light was his hope, his punishment, and his companion. And when it finally went out, so did he. Today his absence is felt everywhere. In the unfinished songs, the empty dressing rooms, the silence between takes. But more than that, his story remains a reminder of what perfection truly costs. It demands everything. Your sleep, your joy, your peace, and gives back only applause that fades too soon. He was too hard on himself, too gentle with others, and too silent about the weight he carried. He thought being perfect would make him loved. But in the end, what the world loved most about him was the thing that killed him. And yet, even in death, Menglong's story carries something sacred, a truth whispered through the heartbreak, that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy, that sometimes the cracks in us are what make the light shine through. He may have been broken by perfection, but in his brokenness, he taught the world that perfection is not beauty. Truth is. Maybe somewhere in a quiet place beyond applause and judgment, you finally found the peace he was searching for all along. A peace untouched by cameras, by fear, by the impossible pursuit of flawlessness. He was perfect to us, but maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be.